We start with, hey, welcome to Spin Out, winner Dave, and we kind
I'm
of,
Winner.
your winner.
Hey, Winner, how's it going, man?
Going great. Excited for another episode of Spin Out.
I think this week what we should talk about is conversation I've had a couple of times, and I know a lot of GPs and LPs are talking about it. What is the right way to integrate AI tools and learning into your venture firm?
Absolutely. I mean, looking at the market data, two out of every $3 are going into AI. It's a massive topic, both on the GP side and the LP side. And true to form, even though it's a very active space on the investment and allocation side, there's less conversation about how GPs are using it on the day to day to create operational leverage for themselves. So excited to dive in a little bit more on this episode there.
First things first is what are you hearing from LPs? Like, are LPs interested in their firms adopting AI tools, or are they kind of comfortable letting the market play out a little bit? Where do you think most LPs are at?
LPs that are actively investing are using tools, but I think the focus is more looking for investors that are taking advantage of this new trend in the market, right? There's a huge shift going on. You're getting this divide between AI native and AI enabled. And I think, LPs are still trying to figure out, they're leveraging a lot of, thought and research by the GPs, but they're still trying to figure out where to invest, right? Are you investing in kind of foundational models? Are you investing in vertical applications? So there's a lot of conversation there. But again, it's less conversation of I'm an LP. How do I use this on my day to day? I think that conversation is starting to come more into the foreground, right? As tools become easier to use. But again, there's so many different functions that an LP has to do. There's so many different functions that a GP has to do that I think people are still trying to figure out, whether it's CRM or whether it's accounting or whether it's making an investment, what is the actual tool that I should be using?
My hypothesis is LPs are interested in how firms can leverage AI to run better processes, get better reach in the marketplace, close deals more effectively or efficiently. I think all of that stuff does make sense. I do think there's an opportunity for GPs to build businesses that can punch above their weight quite a bit compared to like the teams that they have. I hope that that's something that LPs care about, but right now it seems like there's a lot of opportunity for operational alpha for LPs. Venture firms can figure out how to better manage their data, keep it clean, track it, make decisions with it. AI is fantastic for finding insights in a big sea of data where that might have taken a long time before if you could have done it at all. For GPs, there's huge opportunity sets with bringing these tools in, but there's obviously a lot of trade-off.
LPs are sitting on, at least the established ones, treasure troves of data. So I'm sure there's going to be, iterations there where they're building internally. And GPs, right? Like we do a lot of advisory and support, helping GPs think through organizational build out. And that's even a topic of conversation now, right? Like the difference between, do I create my firm with AI tools or do I hire an intern, a chief of staff, an associate, right? So I think those decisions are being heavily considered now, where, a year or two ago, it was like, do I hire more someone on the operational side or do I hire more someone on the investment side? Now it's like, do I hire a person or do I hire an AI? I think the topic of conversation, the focus of conversation, how organizational development is playing out is fundamentally changing right now.
The way I've kind of talked about it with a few GPs and other fund operators is we kind of think of it in three buckets. Like, there's obviously going to be the tools that work for investing. So whether it's relationship building in a CRM or diligence and data gathering to help make decisions or, investment memo writing. I'm seeing a lot of firms right now, the analysts and associates, principals are using AI tools to help write investment memos faster, which is speeding up their investment committee process. So they're gaining some time on the front end. Obviously, I think there's a lot of use cases for generative AI in terms of outreach and what we might call platform or marketing and investor relations in the venture world. So besides just the investment team, you're also seeing in the value add category a lot of use of AI tools as people are building out, communities, they're reaching their audiences more effectively and efficiently. And they're using these tools to what they wouldn't have built a marketing program before. Now, an AI tool can help them do that without distracting from the other pieces. Those all seem like very easy, obvious next steps for a lot of funds that they'll probably start integrating it. On the back office piece, I think there's still a lot to be learned. And there's a lot more risk with accounting and tax. So maybe it's a little bit of a slower adoption curve, I imagine.
Yeah. Yeah. On the front office side, it's the source, pick, win, value add sale. There's a lot of what you just said about using AI to develop, decisions faster, right? And how do you support those decisions so that you can pick better? There's a lot of firms developing tools internally from what I can see. There's also VC backed companies and other companies developing third party tools, right? But it's definitely a trend where I see most GPs trying to figure it out themselves, kind of investing resources themselves, which again, it's the buy versus build. Do you just want to buy a third party service that's better, right? Or do you want to invest a lot of resources and time and money into developing it yourself? Yeah, the writing an investment memo, it's not too advanced, it feels. A lot of it comes down to kind of which prompts you're using, and you can iterate on that to get a pretty decent output, with the current third-party tools. I think that's a really big part of the process now, where it doesn't feel like you're taking the human out of the decision. You're just using kind of these tools, again, human in the loop, to augment the decisions or to enable faster decisions, more decisions, maybe better supported decisions, so that you can review more deals. I've always had this kind of thought in my mind where, I see a pitch deck and the GP says I reviewed 10,000 deals in the last year. And I'm like, from someone who does up to 30 or 40 calls a day, that's almost an impossible task. Like, you did not kiss 10,000 frogs in a single
Yeah.
year. Again, when you're using tools, right, to kind of, and you've kind of set the prompts and set the criteria appropriately, I think you can actually start getting to those, large numbers, right? I actually think you can get a better decision-making engine with these tools today.
I mean, I totally agree. I think you'll see custom GPTs. I mean, that's where me and the team are thinking is, what can we build as a structured tool? Because it's not a AI easy button yet. Like, you still have to have some fundamental understanding of how a venture deal works or how a company gets underwritten to build the prompts that make these GPTs work and not go crazy. And then you have to iterate on them. And as a model updates or changes, just like the App Store, you're going to have to go in and update your prompts or rework the weights and test through it. So it isn't, it's definitely not fire and forget right now.
We were talking before the episode about this cold start problem. I'm a new VC. Where do I start? Like, what should I be using? What are the tools that are effective? Maybe give, 2 or 3 examples there that can help me, move the needle forward as a resource constrained firm.
Yeah, I mean, I think first things first is, what are you trying to achieve and who are you doing it for? So if it's just straight internal operations and efficiency and improvement, there's one set of tools and area. But if it's about relationship building and reaching out and connecting with people or getting inbound, different set of tools. And I think we touched on that a little bit with the kind of, there's buckets right now that seem to make sense with investing, with value add, and with back office. My first thought is, where do I think I get the most juice for the squeeze? Is it in investing? Is it in value add? Or is it in my back office? And that's probably my first decision point. From there, it's, what do my LPs feel comfortable with? If I have a bunch of LPs that are super comfortable with the technology and being cutting edge and using state of the art, then I might be okay with opening up my back office to some of these AI tools. If my LPs are a little bit more conservative, they want to see AI use, but not necessarily on their taxes right now, then value add and investing are great places to start testing the tools. And then the last thing I'll always say before you dive in and really get into all these tools is, you got to remember, discipline and behavior are always going to matter way more than the tools that you buy. And so if you buy a really expensive AI tool and then never use it, or don't learn how to prompt it, or don't continually update it, then you just bought an expensive digital paperweight.
Yeah, I might even throw in fundraising into the mix.
Yeah, absolutely.
In my book, How to Set Up a Venture Capital Fund, like, the framework is, don't spend too much money too quickly if you're an emerging manager. So it's very much like the 0 to 1, the cold start, whatever you want to call it. But it's, thinking through the, journey in very simple frames. So the first frame is, you're figuring out what your fund product actually is, right? Is there AI in that frame? Then you move into, okay, I've got this initial skeleton of a product. You're going to think through fundraising. And I think the CRM discussion is a very active discussion. And again, there's AI native tools that might actually disrupt kind of the incumbents. Are those companies going to even have time to exit, right? As this new wave of tools comes in that are more efficient, cheaper. The unit economics of AI can make these tools effectively cheaper. The calendaring, the things that you have to do to just even launch your fund are all becoming, I think, AI native. There's a whole new kind of AI native wave going on that GPs have to pay attention to and evaluate very closely. And there's no clear winner yet, but it's definitely, that's kind of the shift going on right now, where, again, a year ago, the CRM you thought was the fundamental winner. You do surveys in the market, 7, 8 out of 10 firms are using the same CRM. All of a sudden, same thing with fund admin, same thing with other things. All of a sudden, AI native comes along, and you might have a different ball game you're playing with, different bats and balls in a year or two.
Totally. And I think you kind of saw this progression started with no code and low code, and GPs adopting tools like Airtable and Notion and these relational databases to help structure their data. You saw Omni and Visible and Standard Metrics and other data and metric companies pop up. And I think the next step of that is the AI enablement of those tools, right? To make the data gathering a little bit less painful for both LPs and GPs and founders, right? Like hopefully there's some efficiency there. And then finding those nuggets, those little data insights that are buried in what might be 10 or 15 years of investing history inside of a firm. How can you find those and incorporate it into your next fund model, or incorporate it into how you make decisions on partial sales in this current fund? Like there's so many opportunities, but it is going to require GP's active thought. Like it's not going to be a tool where you can just outsource it, because other people are spending a lot of time researching and thinking, and you have to be aware of how those tools will be used by the ones that are running really fast in one direction.
We put out a good post yesterday. Do you want to chat about that for a second? The different buckets of back office?
I think in the back office, you've got where I think AI is showing up or will show up in the near term in the back office is first fund admin and tax. Those seem to be the obvious opportunity sets, known rules, well identified case law, lots of documents and structured data that the AI can use to build its answers. And I think we will see more large companies integrate those tools. I'm not so sure if they're going to be directly consumer facing in a big way. So for instance, Carta is rolling out a lot of new tools. They're integrating between different platforms that they're acquiring. And there is a future state where the big company with lots of engineers and a budget can integrate AI into those process heavy, like, data heavy, mundane tasks and really drive value. But I'm not so sure as a back office user, I'm going to get a consumer app, AI tool that would replace my fund admin. Because I think I still like having a fund admin that has that specialization, that has that deep understanding and breadth. And so I think there's still value in a third party. It's just my expectation is they're going to build AI in.
As a heuristic, again, just we won't dive into all functions of the back office, but just note like your legal team, right? They're starting to use AI, and if they're not, they should be, right? So you might start to see some cost pressure come in, which is beneficial to GPs, right? Like the whole back office, thinking over the last decade or two, has really been outsourced. I know there's still some firms that insource it. Most of those functions have been outsourced over the last decade or two. And, I think they're GPs in the market, they're almost used to a certain cost structure. I think with these new tools, like some of that cost structure might have some pressure, and we might see, costs go down for what it takes to, run a very effective, a very competitive firm.
I'm anticipating a wave of new AI tools in both fund admin, tax, and audit to either come in and attempt to displace the big incumbents, meaning they identify a wedge. Let's take an AI fund admin. If they could come to you and say, for a fraction of your annual fund admin cost, what if we did a quick audit? Put all of your documents in here, let the AI tell you if they find any mistakes with how your last financial statements. And you could do a quick audit on your previous fund admin to see if it's up to snuff. I think there's going to be a lot of tools where AI comes in and just kind of checks the historical to see where we're at. So I'm waiting for the tools to come in and start kind of really pushing the incumbents to either deliver faster, better service, or for them to adopt these tools and start to give us this customer value that we desire back from those efficiencies. I think this is going to be an evolving conversation that's going to take shape over the next couple of years.
Yeah, this is absolutely a series. Like this isn't the one and done. This conversation will be going on probably for as long as the pod goes. If there's any LPs listening, GPs, vendors, please reach out, give us feedback, tell us what AI tools you're using, and tell us what we should be talking about on next week's episode. All right, let's transition to our Did You See portion of the episode. Over the last week, there's been a lot of chatter on LinkedIn and other forums, specifically around the Treasury announcing the postponement and reopening of the investor advisor rule. Dave, do you want to comment on that for the audience on what that specifically means for them if they're GPs?
I think there's been a longer pattern, and there's a few excellent LinkedIn posts that people are already starting from lawyers that are diving into it. But this is part of a bigger rollback of some of the private fund or venture capital compliance and regulation changes that we saw coming out of Treasury and SEC over the last couple of years. And so you remember the private fund rules from a couple of years ago that were going to change how funds were marketing and talking to LPs and how they communicated certain different parts. Then there was FinCEN and the Treasury Department requiring everybody to create these beneficial ownership reports. That was ultimately kind of postponed by a court, and after the election and the new administration has kind of postponed indefinitely or canceled both of those two things. And then the last one that was on doc that a lot of us were anticipating was changes to the AML KYC rules that were going to affect all private equity. But for exempt reporting advisors, were going to be incredibly burdensome because it was going to require you to have a chief compliance officer and to do a lot of the things that registration requires and kind of defeat the purpose of being an exempt reporting advisor. But the administration and the SEC has postponed for at least 2 years. And I would say, based on the other pieces, it's kind of going the way of an indefinite postponement. And so, what people were worried about is January 1 of next year needing to hire a chief compliance officer, ramping up an expensive AML KYC policy, and those rules have been postponed. So definitely a benefit for the small funds. It won't really change too much at all for the big register.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, Winter. I'll see you. I'll be home later.